Hello there, and welcome to the Psyche's Rest channel. Tonight, we're going to embark on a journey that stretches across thousands of years, wandering through the ways human beings have tried to understand the mysterious realm we enter each night when we close our eyes and drift into sleep. We're going to explore the history and evolution of dream interpretation, from ancient temple rituals to modern neuroscience laboratories, from sacred divination to psychological inquiry. This is a story about how we've attempted to make meaning from the images, emotions, and narratives that arise when consciousness loosens its grip. It's about prophets and priests, philosophers and psychoanalysts, neuroscientists, and indigenous wisdom keepers, all grappling with the same fundamental question: what do our dreams mean? And perhaps more profoundly, why do we dream at all? As we move through this history together, you might find your own relationship with dreams shifting, deepening, or opening in unexpected ways. You might recall dreams from your own life, vivid or half-remembered, and wonder anew what they were trying to tell you. And that's perfectly fine. Let the ideas wash over you gently, like waves on a quiet shore. If you enjoy these nighttime explorations into the mysteries of the mind, you're welcome to like and subscribe. But for now, all you need to do is settle into comfort. Let your breathing slow and deepen. Allow yourself to drift as we wander together through the dreamscapes of history. Let's begin at the beginning, or as close to it as we can reach. For as long as humans have been human, we have dreamed. And for nearly as long, we've wondered what those dreams might mean. The earliest evidence we have of dream interpretation comes from ancient Mesopotamia, the land between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, where some of the world's first civilizations emerged more than 5,000 years ago. The Sumerians, one of the earliest known civilizations, left behind cuneiform tablets that reveal a sophisticated understanding of dreams as messages from the divine realm. They believed that dreams were a form of communication between the human world and the world of the gods and spirits. Some dreams were considered good, sent by benevolent deities to guide and protect. Others were seen as bad, dispatched by malevolent demons to frighten or mislead. One particularly fascinating text that has survived is called the Ishkar Zachik, an Assyrian dream book that dates back perhaps 4,000 years or more. It's structured as a collection of dream omens, recording various dream scenarios and what they might foretell for the dreamer. If you dreamed of flying, for instance, or of your house collapsing, or of eating certain foods, the dream book would offer an interpretation based on accumulated wisdom, perhaps drawn from previous cases where similar dreams had been followed by specific outcomes. This approach to dreams, seeing them as predictive, as windows into future events, would persist across cultures and centuries. It reflects something deep in human psychology, the desire to know what's coming, to prepare ourselves, to gain some measure of control over the uncertainties of existence. In ancient Egypt, dreams held a similarly sacred status, woven into the very fabric of their spiritual and medical practices. Egyptians believed that during sleep, the soul could leave the body and travel to other realms, including the realm of the gods. This wasn't merely metaphorical. The Egyptian conception of the self included multiple spiritual components: the Ka, the Ba, the Ah, each with different properties and capabilities. During sleep, when the physical body rested, these spiritual aspects could journey freely, encountering divine beings, receiving prophetic visions, or visiting the land of the dead. Dreams were not just random neural activity. They were divine revelations, messages that required careful attention and interpretation. Egyptian physicians, priests, and dream interpreters formed a specialized class of professionals who studied dreams systematically. They kept records, compiled observations, and developed increasingly sophisticated theories about how dreams worked and what they meant. The Egyptians understood that not all dreams were equally significant. Some were understood as simple reflections of daily concerns or bodily states. If you dreamed of food when you were hungry, that required no deep interpretation. But other dreams carried weight and authority, particularly those that arrived with a certain quality of vividness, clarity, or emotional intensity. These were understood as genuine communications from the divine realm. One fascinating aspect of Egyptian dream interpretation was its practical integration into decision-making at the highest levels of society. Pharaohs consulted dream interpreters before major decisions. Military campaigns, building projects, appointments to high office, these might all be influenced by dreams and their interpretations. The biblical story of Joseph interpreting Pharaoh's dream of 7 fat cows and 7 lean cows, predicting 7 years of plenty followed by 7 years of famine, reflects this historical reality of dreams shaping statecraft in ancient Egypt. The practice of dream incubation was particularly important in Egyptian culture. If someone needed guidance, healing, or an answer to a pressing question, they might go to a temple, a sacred space dedicated to a particular god. There, they would undergo rituals of purification, prayer, and preparation. Then they would sleep on special dream beds, hoping that during the night, the god would visit them in a dream and provide the wisdom or healing they sought. The oldest dream interpretation manual we've discovered, sometimes called the Ramesside Dream Book, comes from Egypt and dates to around 1200 BCE. It's written on papyrus, now housed in the British Museum, and it lists various dreams alongside their meanings. Like the Mesopotamian texts, it reflects a systematic attempt to catalogue the symbolic language of dreams, to create a kind of dictionary that could be consulted when trying to understand what the night had revealed. The ancient Greeks inherited and elaborated upon these traditions. Dream divination was woven into the fabric of Greek religion and culture. Philosophers like Plato and Aristotle pondered the nature of dreams, debating whether they came from divine sources or arose from within the dreamer's own mind and body. The most famous dream incubation sites in the Greek world were the Asclepia, healing temples dedicated to Asclepius, the god of medicine. The Asclepion at Artemidorus was particularly renowned. People who were sick or suffering would travel there, sometimes from great distances, to seek a healing dream. After rituals and preparations, they would sleep in a special chamber called the Abaton. During the night, Asclepius might appear in their dream, sometimes performing a miraculous surgery, sometimes simply offering advice or showing a symbol that priests would later interpret. What's striking about these practices is that they were not considered superstition or fantasy. They were medicine. They were healthcare. The boundary between the physical and the spiritual, between the psychological and the divine, was not drawn the way it often is in modern Western thought. Healing could come through dreams because dreams were understood as real, as powerful, as connected to forces larger than the individual dreamer. The Greeks also produced the most comprehensive ancient dream interpretation text that has survived to the present day. It was written by a man named Artemidorus of Daldis in the 2nd century CE, and it's called the Oneirocritica, which simply means the interpretation of dreams. This work is extraordinarily valuable because it gives us direct access to how ordinary people in the ancient Greco-Roman world thought about and worked with their NEA. Dreams. Artemidorus was not a priest or a philosopher in the traditional sense. He was more like what we might call a professional dream interpreter, someone who made his living helping people understand their dreams. But he was also something of a research scholar. He tells us in his introduction that he traveled extensively throughout the Greek-speaking world, from the marketplaces of Athens to the far reaches of Asia Minor, collecting dreams and their outcomes from people of every social class and occupation. He attended dream interpretation sessions by other practitioners, both reputable and disreputable. He read extensively in the existing dream interpretation literature, much of which has since been lost, making his work all the more valuable as a record of earlier traditions. He approached his subject with a kind of empirical mindset that might surprise those who think of ancient people as purely superstitious. He was interested in what actually worked, what patterns held up, what predictions proved accurate. What makes Artemidorus's work remarkable is its systematic, almost scientific approach. He traveled widely, collecting dreams from people of all social classes and backgrounds. He analyzed thousands of dreams and their outcomes, looking for patterns. He distinguished between different types of dreams. Some he thought were symbolic and required interpretation. Others he considered more straightforward reflections of the dreamer's recent experiences or bodily states, like dreaming of being thirsty when you're actually thirsty. His interpretations were context-dependent. He believed the same dream symbol could mean different things for different people depending on their occupation, social status, age, and life circumstances. A dream of sailing, for instance, might have one meaning for a merchant who regularly traveled by sea, and quite another for a farmer who had never left his village. Artemidorus's Oneirocritica influenced dream interpretation for more than 1,000 years. It was copied, translated, and adapted throughout the medieval period and beyond. In a sense, it represents the culmination of ancient dream interpretation wisdom, a synthesis of Greek, Egyptian, and Near Eastern traditions. Yet, for all the sophistication of these ancient approaches, they shared a common assumption. Dreams came from somewhere else, whether from gods or spirits, from the future pressing backward into the present, or from the soul's nighttime travels. Dreams were understood as external to the dreamer's mind, as messages to be decoded rather than as creations of the dreamer's own psyche. That understanding would begin to shift in the centuries to come, though not as quickly or as completely as we might imagine. The medieval period in Europe saw a continuation of many ancient dream interpretation practices, but filtered through the lens of Christianity. Dreams in the medieval Christian worldview could come from three sources. They might be sent by God, offering divine guidance or prophecy. They might arise from natural causes, from the dreamer's bodily state or recent experiences. Or they might be temptations or deceptions sent by demons, designed to lead the faithful astray. This tripartite framework meant that dreams required careful discernment. Not every dream was to be trusted or acted upon. Some were spiritually dangerous. The medieval church was cautious about dream interpretation, sometimes condemning it as a form of divination that encroached on God's domain. Yet dreams were also deeply embedded in biblical tradition. The Old and New Testaments are filled with significant dreams, from Jacob's ladder to Joseph's dreams, to the dreams that guided the wise men and Joseph in the Nativity story. One of the most influential theoretical frameworks for medieval dream interpretation came from Macrobius, a Latin writer from the early 5th century CE. His commentary on Cicero's Dream of Scipio proposed a classification of dreams into 5 categories. Some dreams, he suggested, were not worth interpreting at all, mere reflections of bodily needs or recent worries. But others, particularly what he called the somnium, were deeply symbolic and prophetic, requiring skilled interpretation to unlock their meanings. This framework shaped how educated people in medieval Europe thought about dreams for centuries. It offered a way to take dreams seriously without accepting every dream as divinely significant. It acknowledged that some dreams were more important than others, that discernment was necessary. At the more popular level, dream books flourished throughout the medieval period. These were practical, accessible guides, often attributed figures like the biblical Joseph or the prophet Daniel, that offered interpretations for common dream symbols. If you dreamed of water or fire or animals or travel, you could consult these books to learn what your dream might portend. One particularly interesting type was the mantic alphabet, sometimes called a somniale Ioseph. This was a form of dream divination organized alphabetically. You would think of a question before sleep, then notice the first letter that came to mind upon waking. Each letter was associated with specific predictions or meanings. These texts circulated widely in manuscript form and were among the first works printed when the printing press emerged in the 15th century. The transition from medieval to Renaissance thought brought gradual changes in dream interpretation. The Renaissance, with its revival of classical learning and its increasing emphasis on human individuality, began to shift the focus somewhat inward. Religious dreams remained important, but they gradually lost some of their original meaning as direct celestial revelation. There was growing interest in dreams as windows into the individual psyche, into personality and character, yet the transition was slow and uneven. Even as new ideas percolated through European intellectual circles, older practices persisted. Dream books continued to be published and consulted. People still sought meaning in their dreams, still wondered whether a dream might foretell the future or offer guidance for the present. The 16th century religious reforms brought new suspicions toward dream interpretation. Protestant reformers, concerned about what they saw as superstition and false prophecy, sometimes condemned dream divination as a dangerous practice that distracted believers from true faith. The growing scientific revolution of the 17th and 18th centuries further undermined older approaches to dreams. Increasingly, intellectuals and physicians viewed dreams as mere byproducts of digestion, of bodily humors, of meaningless brain activity during sleep. By the late 19th century, dreams had largely been dismissed by mainstream Western science as unimportant, even trivial. They were seen as confused, irrational mental noise, perhaps amusing, perhaps disturbing, but certainly not worthy of serious study. And then came Sigmund Freud. In 1899, though dated 1900 by the publisher, Freud published The Interpretation of Dreams, a book that would fundamentally reshape how the Western world thought about the human mind, consciousness, and the hidden depths of human psychology. The book did not become an immediate bestseller. The first edition consisted of only 600 copies, and it took 8 years for them to sell out. Freud was deeply disappointed by the initial reception, having poured years of work and personal self-analysis into the project. But over time, its influence grew exponentially until it became one of the most significant and controversial works in the history of psychology, translated into dozens of languages and going through multiple revised editions during Freud's lifetime. The book was born from Freud's own extensive dream analysis. Following the death of his father in 1896, Freud began systematically recording and analyzing his own dreams, a process he called self-analysis. He kept detailed records, noting not just the manifest content of his dreams, but also his associations, memories, and feelings connected to each element. This personal work provided much of the raw material for his theories, though he would later draw extensively on dreams reported by his patients as well. Freud's central claim was radical and audacious, especially in the context of late 19th century science, which had largely dismissed dreams as meaningless noise. Dreams, he argued, were not meaningless. They were not divine messages or prophetic visions either, as pre-modern traditions had held. Instead, they were, as he famously put it, the royal road to the unconscious. Dreams were the mind's way of expressing wishes, desires, and conflicts that were too threatening or unacceptable to acknowledge during waking life. This formulation was revolutionary because it gave dreams psychological significance without requiring belief in anything supernatural. Dreams mattered not because God sent them, but because they revealed truths about the dreamer's own psyche, truths that were otherwise hidden even from the dreamer's conscious awareness. Freud proposed that every dream has 2 layers of content. The manifest content is what you actually experience in the dream, the narrative, the images, the events as you remember them upon waking. But beneath that surface lies the latent content, the hidden, unconscious meaning, the true wishes and conflicts that the dream is expressing in disguised form. Why disguised? Because Freud believed the unconscious mind is full of desires and impulses that the conscious mind finds unacceptable, often related to sexuality or aggression. During sleep, when the ego's defenses are lowered, these repressed wishes try to surface. But even in sleep, a kind of censorship mechanism remains active. To avoid waking the dreamer with anxiety or distress, the unconscious transforms these wishes into symbolic, often bizarre dream images. Freud identified several mechanisms by which this transformation occurs. One is condensation, the process of combining multiple ideas, people, or feelings into a single dream image. A person in your dream might be a composite of several people you know, or a single object might represent multiple concepts. Another mechanism is displacement, where emotional significance is shifted from an important object or person to something seemingly trivial or unrelated as a way of evading the censor. To interpret a dream, Freud developed the method of free association, a technique that would become central not just to dream work but to psychoanalysis more broadly. Rather than consulting a dream dictionary with fixed symbolic meanings, as earlier traditions had done, he asked his patients to say whatever came to mind in relation to each element of the dream, no matter how irrelevant, trivial, or embarrassing it might seem. The instruction was simple but profound. Don't censor, don't edit, don't try to make sense. Just let one thought lead to another and see where it goes. By following these associative chains, often through seemingly random twists and turns, Freud believed one could work backward from the manifest content of the dream to the latent wishes beneath. The patient might start with a dream image of, say, a house. Free associating on house might lead to my childhood home, then to my mother, then to a memory of conflict with his mother, then to feelings of guilt, and so on. Through this process, the hidden emotional significance of the dream symbol would gradually emerge. Freud was careful to note that this process required the analyst's interpretation and guidance. The patient's associations provided the raw material, but the analyst needed to understand the mechanisms of dream work, the defenses, the patterns of symbolization, to help make sense of what the associations revealed. This gave the analyst considerable power and authority, something that later critics would question. But it also reflected Freud's view that unconscious material was genuinely hidden, not readily accessible even to the person whose unconscious it was. Freud also proposed that certain symbols appeared with enough regularity across different dreamers that they could be interpreted more universally. He suggested, often controversially, that elongated objects like sticks, trees, or weapons often symbolized male genitalia, while enclosed spaces like rooms, caves, or vessels often symbolized female genitalia. These sexual interpretations, which seemed to dominate many of his analyses, would become one of the most criticized aspects of his dream theory. This was a dramatic departure from thousands of years of dream interpretation tradition. Freud was not interested in whether dreams predicted the future or conveyed messages from gods or spirits. He was interested in what dreams revealed about the dreamer's own unconscious mind, about inner conflicts, repressed desires, unresolved traumas. His approach was also highly individualized. Unlike Artemidorus, who sought general patterns and principles, Freud insisted that dream symbols had to be understood in the context of each dreamer's unique life history and associations. There might be some common symbolic elements, but the real work of interpretation required deep personal exploration. Freud's theory resonated with something in the cultural moment. The turn of the 20th century was a time of rapid change, urbanization, new technologies, shifting social norms. There was a growing sense that beneath the surface of civilized life lurked darker, more primal forces. Freud offered a framework for understanding those hidden depths, and dreams became a primary tool for accessing them. Yet from the beginning, Freud's ideas were controversial. Some found them reductive, overly focused on sexuality. Others questioned whether his interpretations were actually discoveries or merely projections of his own theoretical commitments onto his patients' dreams. And some, including one of Freud's own early followers, would propose a very different way of understanding what dreams might mean. Carl Gustav Jung started as a student and collaborator of Freud, their relationship beginning with great mutual admiration in the early 1900s. Freud saw Jung, a promising young Swiss psychiatrist, as his chosen intellectual heir, the one who would carry psychoanalysis forward. They corresponded extensively, met regularly, and Freud even traveled with Jung to America in 1909 to give lectures introducing psychoanalysis to American audiences. But over time, cracks appeared in their relationship. The two men had fundamental disagreements about the nature of the unconscious, the role of sexuality in psychological development, and what dreams were really doing. By 1913, their personal and professional relationship had fractured completely, a break that was painful for both men and that would shape the rest of their careers. Jung would spend decades developing his own approach to psychology, one he called analytical psychology, to distinguish it from Freud's psychoanalysis. Jung developed his own approach to dream interpretation, one that would prove as influential as Freud's, though in different ways, and often appealing to different audiences. Jung agreed with Freud that dreams were expressions of the unconscious. That much they shared. But he had a very different conception of what the unconscious contained and what dreams were trying to do. For Jung, the unconscious was not merely a repository of personal repressed desires and traumatic memories, though it included those things. It was something far vaster, far older, far more profound. Jung proposed the existence of what he called the collective unconscious, a deeper layer of the psyche that was not individual but shared by all human beings, perhaps even by all living things. Where Freud saw the unconscious primarily as a repository of repressed desires, Jung saw it as far richer and more complex, containing not just personal material, but also what he called the collective unconscious. The collective unconscious, in Jung's view, is a deeper layer of the psyche shared by all human beings. It's made up of archetypes, universal patterns and symbols that appear in myths, religions, and stories across cultures and throughout history. Archetypes include figures like the hero, the mother, the trickster, the wise old man, and the shadow, as well as experiences like birth, death, transformation, and the quest. Jung believed that dreams could draw on both the personal unconscious, shaped by the individual's life experiences, and the collective unconscious, bringing forth archetypal images and themes. This made dreams potentially far more than just expressions of personal wishes. They could be messages from the deeper, wiser layers of the psyche, offering guidance, warning, or compensation for one-sided attitudes in waking life. Jung distinguished between what he called ordinary dreams and big dreams. Ordinary dreams dealt with the day's residue, personal concerns, minor adjustments. But big dreams, which were rarer, carried the power and luminosity of archetypal imagery. These were dreams that felt significant, dreams you might remember for years, dreams that seemed to touch on something universal and profound. Unlike Freud, Jung did not believe dreams were primarily disguises or distortions. He saw them as natural expressions of the unconscious, speaking in their own symbolic language. The unconscious, he thought, was not adversarial or deceptive. It was trying to communicate, to bring balance, to compensate for aspects of the personality that were underdeveloped or repressed. For instance, if someone in waking life was overly rational and intellectual, ignoring their emotions and intuition, they might dream of flooding water or wild animals, symbols of the emotional and instinctual side they were neglecting. The dream was not a wish fulfillment, as Freud might have interpreted it. It was a corrective message, an attempt by the psyche to restore balance, to bring attention to what had been ignored or pushed aside. This compensatory function of dreams was, for Jung, one of their primary purposes. Dreams didn't just reveal what was repressed. They actively worked to balance the personality, to integrate opposed elements, to guide the individual toward what Jung called individuation, the lifelong process of becoming more fully oneself, more whole, more conscious. Jung also recognized what he called the prospective function of dreams. Some dreams, he believed, were forward-looking, anticipating future developments in the dreamer's psychological life. Not in the sense of literal prophecy, but in the sense that the unconscious might be preparing the dreamer for challenges or changes ahead, offering guidance or rehearsing potential responses. This was quite different from Freud's emphasis on dreams as primarily about the past, about childhood wishes and unresolved conflicts. Another key difference was Jung's attitude toward dream symbols. Freud had sometimes suggested that dreams disguise their meaning, that they're fundamentally defensive. Jung disagreed. He thought the unconscious communicated as clearly as it could, given that it spoke in the language of symbols rather than in rational, linear language. The problem wasn't that dreams were trying to hide their meaning. The problem was that we, with our overly rational, literal mindset, had forgotten how to read symbolic language. This meant that interpretation required a different approach. Rather than trying to decode or unmask the dream, stripping away its disguise to reveal the hidden meaning beneath, Jung encouraged a more receptive, respectful attitude. You had to learn to speak the dream's language, to think symbolically, to allow images to resonate and reveal their significance gradually. Jung also emphasized the importance of interpreting dreams in series rather than in isolation. A single dream might be ambiguous or unclear, but when you look at multiple dreams over time, patterns emerge. Recurring symbols, themes, or figures might reveal themselves, offering a more complete picture of what the unconscious is working on. His method of interpretation was different from Freud's free association. Jung practiced what he called amplification. Rather than following personal associations away from the dream image, he encouraged exploring the image itself more deeply, connecting it to mythological, religious, and cultural parallels. If you dreamed of a snake, rather than simply asking what snakes meant to you personally, Jung might explore the snake as an archetypal symbol, its appearance in various mythologies, its associations with healing, transformation, danger, wisdom. This approach opened dream interpretation to a much broader horizon. It suggested that our dreams connect us not just to our personal past, but to the entire human story, to the accumulated wisdom and imagery of our species. In this sense, Jung's approach was simultaneously more spiritual and more anthropological than Freud's. Jung's ideas found particular resonance with artists, writers, and those drawn to spiritual exploration. His emphasis on symbols, on the numinous quality of archetypal dreams, on the idea that the psyche has its own wisdom and intelligence, offered a way of taking dreams seriously that felt less reductive than Freud's sexual interpretations and less dismissive than the scientific materialism that had dominated before Freud. Both Freud and Jung helped establish the idea that dreams are meaningful, that they deserve attention, that they can tell us something important about ourselves. But they also established a specifically psychological and inward-focused approach to dreams. The dream was no longer primarily a message from gods or a prediction of the future. It was a message from yourself, from the parts of yourself you didn't fully know or understand. This was a profound shift, one that still shapes how many people in the Western world think about dreams today. But even as Freud and Jung were developing their theories, new scientific discoveries were beginning to reveal the biological basis of dreaming in ways that would eventually challenge and complicate psychoanalytic approaches. In 1953, a graduate student named Eugene Aserinsky, working in the laboratory of his advisor Nathaniel Kleitman at the University of Chicago, made a discovery that would revolutionize sleep science and fundamentally alter how we understand dreaming. The story of the discovery itself is fascinating. Aserinsky was using a newly available technology, the electroencephalogram or EEG, to measure brain activity during sleep. He was also monitoring eye movements, initially as a way of determining sleep depth. One night, while observing his young son sleeping in the laboratory, Aserinsky noticed something unexpected. During certain periods, the boy's closed eyelids fluttered with rapid movements, almost as if he were watching something. At the same time, the EEG showed brainwave patterns that looked surprisingly similar to waking patterns. This was puzzling because the boy was clearly deeply asleep, unresponsive to external stimuli. Aserinsky began systematically waking sleepers during these periods of rapid eye movement. Almost invariably, they reported vivid, detailed, often bizarre dreams. When he woke them during other stages of sleep, dreams were reported far less frequently, and when they were reported, they tended to be shorter, less vivid, more thought-like. This discovery of REM sleep, rapid eye movement sleep, transformed the study of dreams. For the first time in history, there was an objective, measurable physiological marker that could indicate when someone was likely dreaming. You didn't have to rely solely on subjective reports. You could watch the brain waves, observe the eye movements, measure heart rate and breathing patterns, and know with reasonable certainty that the person was in a dreaming state. The implications were enormous. Sleep was not a uniform state of unconsciousness, a simple switching off of the brain. It had structure, architecture, distinct stages cycling throughout the night. REM sleep occurred roughly every 90 minutes, with REM periods getting longer as the night progressed. The final REM period before morning waking might last 30 minutes or more, which explains why people often remember morning dreams more vividly. For the first time, there was an objective, measurable, physiological marker associated with dreaming. You could watch someone sleep, observe their brain activity and eye movements, and know with reasonable certainty when they were likely dreaming. The discovery showed that sleep was not a uniform state of unconsciousness. It had distinct stages, cycling through lighter and deeper periods, with REM sleep recurring several times each night in increasingly longer episodes. During REM, brain activity resembled waking patterns in many ways. The brain was highly active, yet the body was essentially paralyzed, preventing the sleeper from acting out their dreams. This opened up new avenues of research. Scientists could now study dreaming systematically in laboratory settings. They could deprive people of REM sleep specifically and observe the effects. They could correlate dream content with brain activity patterns. The neuroscience of dreaming became a legitimate and exciting field of inquiry. The discovery also had a profound psychological impact. It meant that we all dream every night, multiple times, whether we remember those dreams or not. Before this discovery, it was unclear how universal dreaming really was. Some people claimed never to dream. REM research showed they almost certainly did dream, they just didn't remember their dreams upon waking. Studies of REM sleep deprivation revealed its importance. When experimenters prevented people from entering REM sleep night after night, waking them each time REM began, several things happened. Dream pressure built up. On subsequent nights, people entered REM more quickly and more frequently, as if trying to make up for lost dream time. They also showed emotional and cognitive effects, including increased irritability, difficulty concentrating, and in extreme cases, even brief waking hallucinations or dream-like intrusions into waking consciousness. During REM, something remarkable happens in the brain. Brain activity is intense, comparable to waking levels. Visual processing centers light up. Emotional centers, particularly the amygdala and limbic system, are highly active. Memory systems are engaged. But the prefrontal cortex, the area associated with logical reasoning, executive control, and reality testing, shows reduced activity. Meanwhile, the body enters a state of temporary paralysis, called atonia, preventing the sleeper from physically acting out their dreams. This combination, vivid sensory experience, intense emotion, reduced critical thinking, and physical immobility, creates the unique phenomenology of dreaming. It explains why dreams can feel so real while we're in them, why they're often emotionally powerful, why they follow their own bizarre logic that seems sensible until we wake up, and why we don't typically move our bodies in response to dream events. The neurochemical environment of REM is also distinctive. Levels of serotonin and norepinephrine, neurotransmitters involved in mood regulation and attention, drop to their lowest points. Meanwhile, acetylcholine, a neurotransmitter involved in learning and memory, remains high. This creates conditions that some researchers believe facilitate unusual associations, creative combinations of memory elements, and the kind of flexible, loose thinking that characterizes dreams. In the decades following Aserinsky and Kleitman's discovery, researchers made numerous findings that complicated earlier assumptions. It turned out that dreaming wasn't exclusive to REM sleep, though REM dreams were typically more vivid, bizarre, and emotionally intense. Dreams also occurred during non-REM stages, though they were often more thought-like, less visual, less narrative. Some researchers found that people could even have dream-like experiences during the hypnagogic period, the transition between waking and sleeping, and during the hypnopompic period, the transition from sleep to waking. These transitional states produce their own unique forms of imagery and experience, often more fragmentary than full dreams, but sometimes vivid and memorable. One of the most influential neuroscientific theories of dreaming was proposed in 1977 by J. Allen Hobson and Robert McCarley, called the activation synthesis hypothesis. It suggested that dreams arise from the brain's attempt to make sense of random neural activity generated by the brainstem during REM sleep. According to this model, there was no hidden meaning to dreams, no latent content. Dreams were simply the forebrain's creative efforts to synthesize random signals into some kind of coherent narrative or imagery. This theory was explicitly anti-Freudian. It suggested that looking for deep psychological meaning in dreams was misguided, like trying to find meaning in the patterns created by a faulty TV signal. Dreams might be interesting, even revealing in some ways about how the brain organizes information, but they were not encrypted messages from the unconscious. Hobson's theory generated considerable debate. Critics argued that even if dreams arose from random neural activity, the way the brain synthesized that activity into specific images and narratives could still be meaningful, shaped by the dreamer's memories, emotions, and concerns. The content of dreams might not be random, even if their initial trigger was. Over time, Hobson himself modified his position as new brain imaging data emerged. Studies using fMRI and PET scans showed that during REM sleep, certain brain regions were highly active, particularly areas associated with emotion, visual processing, and memory, while the prefrontal cortex, involved in logical thinking and executive control, showed reduced activity. This pattern could help explain why dreams are often emotionally intense and visually vivid, but also illogical and bizarre. Other researchers proposed different theories about the function of dreaming. Some suggested dreams play a role in memory consolidation, helping to process and integrate the day's experiences. Studies showed that people deprived of REM sleep had impaired memory for certain types of learning, particularly procedural and emotional memories. Others proposed that dreams serve an emotional regulation function, helping to process difficult emotions in a safe context where the prefrontal cortex's inhibitions are reduced. The dream, in this view, is like a theater where emotional scenarios can be worked through without real-world consequences. Still others suggested that dreaming might be involved in threat simulation, rehearsing responses to dangerous or challenging situations. Across different cultures and throughout human history, dreams often contain threatening elements, and this might reflect an evolutionary adaptation that helps prepare us for waking challenges. What's striking about modern neuroscience is that it doesn't necessarily contradict psychological approaches to dreams, though it can seem to at first. The brain mechanisms underlying dreaming, the neurochemical conditions of REM sleep, the activation of emotional and visual centers, these don't make the content of dreams meaningless. They provide a different level of explanation. You can understand dreams from a neurobiological perspective, looking at what's happening in the brain. And you can understand them from a psychological or even spiritual perspective, looking at what they mean to the dreamer. These aren't mutually exclusive. They're complementary ways of approaching the same phenomenon. Recent research has even shown some fascinating convergences between ancient practices and modern science. Studies of dream incubation, where people intentionally focus on a question or problem before sleep, suggest this can indeed influence dream content in ways that sometimes provide creative solutions or new perspectives. The mechanism might be very different from what ancient Greeks believed, but the practice itself seems to have genuine effects. Lucid dreaming, the state of being aware you're dreaming while still in the dream, has also become a subject of serious scientific study. Researchers have even managed to communicate with lucid dreamers while they're dreaming, asking yes-no questions that dreamers answer using prearranged eye movement signals. This remarkable achievement suggests that the boundary between waking and dreaming consciousness is more permeable than we once thought. While Western psychology and neuroscience were developing their approaches to dreams, it's important to remember that other cultures around the world never stopped taking dreams seriously, and many maintain traditions very different from the psychological and scientific models that came to dominate in Europe and North America. In many indigenous cultures, dreams are understood not primarily as products of the individual mind, but as experiences that connect the dreamer to larger realities, to ancestors, spirits, the land, the community. The idea that dreams are just in your head would seem strange, even impoverished, from these perspectives. Among some Native American traditions, for instance, dreams are understood as sources of genuine spiritual knowledge and guidance. Certain dreams might indicate a calling to become a healer or a leader. Dream visions might guide important decisions or reveal information about the natural world. The distinction between dreaming and waking reality is not absolute. Both are real, though in different ways. In many African cultures, dreams are seen as a space where the living can communicate with ancestors. A dream in which a deceased relative appears is not just a memory or a psychological projection. It's understood as an actual visit, a message that deserves respect and attention. Dreams can carry warnings, requests, or blessings from those who have passed on. Traditional Chinese culture has long understood dreams as influenced by external forces, including gods, ancestors, and spirits, as well as by the dreamer's own bodily and energetic state. Dream interpretation was a respected practice, but it was embedded in a holistic understanding of health and cosmology that differs significantly from Western psychological models. Research comparing dream content across cultures has found both universals and significant differences. Most humans, regardless of culture, dream about familiar people, social interactions, movement through space, and occasionally threatening or anxious situations. But the specifics vary considerably. Studies comparing forager communities in Africa with Western populations found that when foragers dreamed of threats, the resolution often involved community members coming to their aid, reflecting their interdependent social structures. Western dreamers facing threats in dreams were less likely to be rescued by others and more likely to experience ongoing stress and anxiety, perhaps reflecting more individualistic cultural values. Dreams in collectivist cultures often feature more social content and less emphasis on individual achievement or identity. The self in the dream is more connected to family, community, and social roles. In contrast, dreams in highly individualistic cultures, like the United States, tend to feature more personal autonomy, individual choices, and self-focused narratives. These cultural differences suggest that while the neurobiological basis of dreaming may be universal, the content and meaning of dreams are shaped by the cultural context in which the dreamer lives. We don't just dream from our individual unconscious. We dream from our cultural unconscious, from the symbols, stories, values, and concerns that surround us. This raises important questions about any universal theory of dream interpretation. Can Freud's or Jung's frameworks, developed in early 20th century Vienna and Switzerland, really apply to all humans everywhere? Or are they themselves culturally specific ways of making meaning from dreams? Some contemporary anthropologists and dream researchers argue for a more pluralistic approach, one that acknowledges multiple valid ways of understanding dreams. From a neuroscience perspective, dreams involve specific brain processes. From a psychological perspective, dreams can reveal aspects of the personal unconscious. From a cultural perspective, dreams reflect and reinforce social values and narratives. From a spiritual perspective, in traditions that embrace such views, dreams can be encounters with realities beyond the purely material. None of these perspectives necessarily cancels out the others. They offer different lenses, different levels of analysis. The question is not which one is true, but which one is useful, meaningful, or illuminating for a particular dreamer in a particular context. This brings us to the contemporary landscape of dream interpretation, which is remarkably diverse and eclectic. In professional psychology, dream interpretation is far less central than it was during Freud and Jung's era. Many therapists don't work with dreams at all. Cognitive behavioral approaches, which dominate much of contemporary therapy, tend to focus on waking thoughts and behaviors rather than unconscious material revealed in dreams. Yet there's been something of a renaissance in dream research and interest in recent years. New theories have emerged that attempt to integrate psychological and neuroscientific perspectives. One example is the predictive processing model, which suggests that dreaming might be the brain's way of testing and refining its predictions about the world, running simulations to improve its models of reality. Another contemporary approach emphasizes the emotion regulation function of dreams. Research suggests that REM sleep and dreaming during REM helps process emotional experiences, especially difficult or traumatic ones. Dreams might be the brain's way of working through feelings in a context where the physiological stress response is dampened. This could explain why dreams often deal with emotionally charged material and why REM sleep deprivation can lead to emotional instability. Some contemporary researchers and therapists are also revisiting Jung's ideas with fresh interest. The concept of archetypes, while not taken literally, can be understood as evolved patterns in human psychology that show up reliably across cultures. The shadow, the anima and animus, the hero's journey, these might not be mystical entities in a collective unconscious, but they do seem to reflect common human experiences and psychological dynamics. There's also growing interest in the potential therapeutic applications of lucid dreaming. If you can become aware that you're dreaming while in a dream, you might be able to consciously work through fears, practice skills, or even reprogram negative dream patterns. Some therapists are exploring lucid dreaming as a tool for treating nightmares, especially in people with PTSD. Meanwhile, Outside professional psychology, many people continue to find personal meaning in their dreams using a variety of frameworks. Some keep dream journals, tracking symbols and themes over time. Some use dream dictionaries, modern versions of ancient dream books, though hopefully with more nuance and awareness that meanings are context dependent. Some approach dreams spiritually, seeing them as messages from the divine or from their own higher self. What seems clear is that there's no single correct way to interpret dreams. The meaning of a dream, if it has meaning, is not an objective fact to be discovered, but something created in the interaction between the dream, the dreamer, and the interpretive framework they bring to it. This might sound like relativism, as if anything goes, but it's actually more subtle than that. Some interpretations are more generative, more useful, more illuminating than others. An interpretation that helps you understand yourself better, that sparks insight, that opens up new possibilities for growth or healing, is valuable regardless of whether it's objectively true in some scientific sense. Freud may have been wrong about many things. His theories of psychosexual development, his emphasis on universal symbols, his belief that all dreams were wish fulfillments, but he was right about something fundamental. Dreams can reveal aspects of ourselves that we don't fully see in waking life. Paying attention to them, taking them seriously, can be a path to self-knowledge. Jung may have gone too far in some of his mystical speculations about the collective unconscious, but he was right that dreams speak in symbols, and those symbols connect to larger patterns of meaning that show up throughout human culture and history. Working with dream imagery, amplifying it through myth and story, can enrich our inner lives. The neuroscientists are right that dreams arise from specific brain processes, that understanding the biology of sleep and dreaming is important, but they're not necessarily right that this biology exhausts what dreams are or what they can mean to us. And the indigenous wisdom keepers, the spiritual practitioners, the people throughout history who have seen dreams as sacred or as connections to realms beyond the merely personal, they're right that dreams can feel profoundly meaningful, that they can shape lives and communities, that they deserve reverence and attention. Perhaps the deepest truth about dream interpretation is this: dreams are a space where the personal and the universal meet, where individual experience touches something larger. They arise from your brain, yes, but your brain contains your entire life history, your memories, your emotions, your fears and hopes. They're shaped by your culture, but culture itself is a vast, living tapestry of symbols and stories. They reflect neurobiological processes, but those processes have been shaped by millions of years of evolution, carrying forward patterns that proved adaptive for survival. When you dream, you're not just you, you're also every human who has ever lived, facing the same fundamental questions of existence. You're the ancient dreamer in Mesopotamia, seeking divine guidance. You're the Greek pilgrim sleeping in the temple of Asclepius, hoping for healing. You're Freud's patient on the couch, exploring the hidden chambers of your psyche. You're the neuroscience subject in the sleep lab, your brain waves displayed on a monitor. And you're simply yourself, lying in bed, traveling through strange landscapes that somehow feel familiar, meeting people who don't quite exist, experiencing emotions without clear cause, following a logic that makes perfect sense until you wake up. The history of dream interpretation is not a story of progress from ignorance to knowledge. It's a story of different ways of seeing, different questions asked, different values emphasized. Each tradition, each theory illuminates something. Each also leaves some things in shadow. For your own dreams, you might find value in various approaches. You might notice, as Freud suggested, that sometimes your dreams seem to express wishes or fears you haven't fully admitted to yourself. You might recognize, as Jung proposed, that certain dreams carry archetypal power, connecting to themes larger than your personal story. You might understand from neuroscience that dreams reflect your brain processing emotions and consolidating memories. And you might feel, as many spiritual traditions affirm, that some dreams seem to carry a significance that transcends any purely material explanation. The question is not which framework is correct, but which one helps you engage with your dreams in a way that feels meaningful and generative. Dreams are experiences, and like all experiences, they become part of your life through the meanings you make of them. As we come to the end of this journey through the history of dream interpretation, perhaps the most important takeaway is simply this: dreams matter. They've mattered to humans across all cultures and time periods. They've inspired art, guided decisions, offered comfort, provoked fear, sparked creativity, and helped people understand themselves and their place in the world. You don't need to choose between ancient wisdom and modern science, between psychology and spirituality, between personal and universal meanings. You can hold it all lightly, drawing on whatever frameworks resonate with you and your experience. Pay attention to your dreams if you wish. Keep a journal. Notice patterns. Explore the images and emotions that arise. You might be surprised by what you discover. Or you might simply find that the act of attending to your dreams enriches your inner life, creates a sense of connection to something deeper. If you've enjoyed this exploration of dream interpretation through the ages, you're welcome to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and explore other topics we've covered. There's always more to discover about the mysteries of consciousness, sleep, and the human mind. But for now, if you find yourself growing drowsy, if your thoughts are drifting, if you're hovering on the edge of sleep, then let yourself go. Let yourself sink into rest. And perhaps tonight, as you dream, you'll carry with you some thread of what we've explored together, some small awareness that your dreams, whatever they are, connect you to the great human story, to thousands of years of wonder and curiosity about what the night reveals. Sleep well, dream deeply, and may your dreams, in whatever language they speak, bring you insight, peace, and rest.